Welcome back. Brad here again. Today what I want to talk about is your identity. Why is this important? Well, actually for me this is kind of a more challenging topic compared to some of the other weeks. Those ones are very obvious, things like day game or using the text, how to text girls and using the phone and all that. But when it comes into more of the inner game topics, especially this one specifically, this is something I haven't really thought about in a long time, but I know earlier on in my development it was actually a huge issue that I had to deal with and kind of come to terms. So why is identity important, especially when you're thinking about you're just cold approaching, meeting women? Why do you need to worry about this at all? And it's not so much that it's something that's going to help you out specifically get better results, but what happens is it's more of a byproduct of the experience you get and run into when you're out cold approaching and meeting women. What happens is you go out, and as you get comfortable with the rejection, you get desensitized to it. You also have a lot of really good interactions. And then over time, when you go out more regularly, you notice how the bad interactions is they kind of float away. You don't even really remember them or think about them. And at the same point, the good ones kind of fall into that headspace too, where you've had enough good interactions that they kind of just blend in with each other. And what happens, most people that live their life, 99% of the world, they identify themselves based on the world around them, and the environment dictates who they are, how they should make decisions, and how they should act in the world, basically. So what is challenging when you get into the whole self-development and cold approach side of things is you kind of step away from that a bit, because every time you go up to that girl and she rejects you or just denies your initial approach, by the fact of you being desensitized to it and not giving a fuck about her response, it's just peeling another little layer of the onion of giving a fuck what people think, identifying with other people's opinions, and learning more and more who you are from an internal standpoint. So that is a very confusing thing to kind of explain properly. So I want to go pretty in depth here and explain what it means to like know who you are and be who you are and act properly in accordance to that. It's funny how as you get into the pickup stuff, that all of a sudden it puts you into the slippery slope of self-development and asking those sort of questions like, who am I? What is my identity here? And I think a lot of this comes also from you have the whole reactions from other people not identifying with that. The other side of it is you realize how malleable your personality is and how arbitrary it is, even more importantly. I remember hearing some stories of some guys on boot camp, one specific one relating to how arbitrary your personality is he told me the story. This dude was probably in his late 30s. And he told me the story of how when he was 5 years old, he was throwing rocks, naively just throwing some rocks off a bridge, like little pebbles, anything special. But after a while of doing this, at some point, him in his hometown of Slovenia, some lady comes along and starts beating him, like abusively beating him up because he was throwing rocks and one of them hit her child or something. And he was conscious enough at this stage of the game, 35, 40 years old, to know that he was afraid to talk to strangers because he thought they were mean or they thought they were bad people because of this experience he had when he was 5 years old. So think about that. For 3 decades, this guy's been filtering every time he approaches or talks to or sees a stranger, he's filtering it through a frame of something that happened when he was 4 or 5 years old. And something I learned in one of the seminars I did a self-development. I've done a bunch of self-development seminars. But one specific statistic that I heard that I thought was really interesting is what they said is, by the time you're 4 years old, 80% of your personality has already been developed and cultivated. So think about the experiences you've had before you were 4 years old that led you to become who you are today, and how these things that you kind of filter everything through these little glasses, the rosy glasses of things that happen. Maybe when you're 2 years old, your mom took too long to get the milk to give you milk when you're a little kid or some shit. And because of that, now all of a sudden you feel that you're always fighting for your mom's approval. And then you're fighting for that approval. And what's really interesting with these really early on traits that you have is because you fought for that approval for her, later on, 10, 20, 30 years, you're not fighting maybe specifically for that approval for her, but you're fighting for approval for everyone. And then you go up to that girl and you're trying to get her approval. Or more probably common, and one that a lot of guys maybe are aware of, is that they're not fighting the approval of the girl, but they're fighting the approval of their friends, their wings that they're going out with. So you have guys, they'll go up, they'll grab some girl, and they'll ask the friends, is she hot enough? Is she hot enough? You guys think she's hot enough? Boom. And they're not even doing it because they want the girl. They're just doing it so their friends think they're cool. So for me, this ultimately actually is a huge realization of freedom. I think for a lot of guys at first, maybe they could get pissed off about this, or you could fall into a victim headspace. But for me, this makes me realize through the arbitrariness and the malleability, if that's a word, of your personality, it allows me to look at aspects that other people have and take those things on, take the things on that I would like to bring into my life and to make me more of a solid person and move me towards what I want in life. So a good example, you know, guys, they always do those tests where you can be like, am I an INTJ or an ENTP? And for me, I think those are complete bullshit. Because of course you're predisposed to a certain way of acting. But again, cool, I want to change that. I want to constantly be growing, constantly becoming a better person and moving towards what I want in life. One of those things, two of those things that tie into the same one is I want to be around amazing other guys, like super successful men, basically. Because then I'm going to learn more. I'm going to find great mentors and they're going to teach me things and tell me things to move me to be even more successful. And on the other side, of course, with the Evolutions product, dating product, to get me more women in my life. So those are both things that are a result of being more extroverted. I used to always joke around on boot camp and say that I'm a closet introvert, but every person that I say that next to, they say the same thing. They're like, oh my God, you are, so am I too. I think pretty much everyone that gets in this on some level is a closet introvert. Basically, it doesn't take any energy to go out and be social. I talked about last month about the day game and how, you know, you're just going through your day, you're at Starbucks and you see that girl or you even see the barista behind the register. And do you really have to start a conversation? Do you really have to keep it going? It doesn't matter. You can just pay for your bill and, you know, just walk away. There's no detriment there. You're not losing out. But actually, think about it. You maybe are losing out. But the thing with being social is it takes energy. It takes output. You go up, you talk to her. Maybe she says some sort of thing about some book. You go read the book. It changes your life. Maybe you go to some networking event. You don't have to talk to anyone there, but you go and you force yourself to kind of have a couple conversations. And through that, you meet your next business partner, or you meet a guy who introduces you to some cute girls or something like that. So for me, even though being an extrovert is not naturally in my personality, it's something that I've developed over time. And now it really is, I'd feel weirder not to talk to people at some sort of event like that, or go out and not talk to people in those situations. It's just something that now it's became a part of me. So it is 100% cultivated. Some other things that I've personally cultivated related to pickup, before we get back into the identity stuff, would be, you know, like the dominance and some of those more hardcore things. I was very just flimsy, passive dude, just go with the flow, kind of pacifist, as opposed to taking what I want out of life and really kind of being more selfish and all that. But that's for a whole nother video. Ultimately, what it shows you, though, is that you can grab things and take things and make your personality what you want it to be to get what you want out of life. So what is the value of having a concrete idea of what your identity is? Why is this even important? And then ultimately, I'll tell you some good identities to have down the road. I think for me, when you know who you are on a deep level, then what it does is it filters every decision you make. I talked about before how the guy thought strangers were bad, so whenever he had an issue, whenever he had to interact with strangers, he filtered it. Oh, they are bad, so I will respond in this sort of way. And the more concrete of an identity you have, it just gives you kind of some sort of direction, which I think a lot of people need. It's the whole, if you had every flavor of ice cream in the rainbow, you never really know what to kind of get there. There's too many choices. Whereas if all you have is vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, then you're like, I'm a chocolate type of guy. And that's just all you go for is the chocolate. Oh, and it's very concrete and easy because you have less decisions to make and less choices. And I think most people, they like that. They don't want to have a lot of choice or variety because it kind of overwhelms them. So also, I think most people that aren't that conscious, the way they identify themselves is with their job. Because if you're doing something 40, 50, 60 hours a week, it's probably the thing you're thinking about most, and you're around the same sort of people. So because that's your kind of clique of people that you're around, you start identifying with that. You become a doctor and you go to the store and you're buying a new shirt. You're looking for a new shirt and you think, Should I get the black shirt with the flaming skulls on it? Or should I get the J. Crew shirt with the boat shoes? It seems like everyone else in my clique is getting the boat shoes and the J. Crew shirt, so I'm going to kind of follow suit there and fit in. So you see how the identity, it filters things and it almost puts you in a box in a way, which ultimately, it doesn't have to be a bad thing if you choose that identity. I think most people, they don't choose it, they just kind of fall into it. That's the most important thing when it comes to an identity, is it has to be, you choose it, and it has to be something that's under your control. That's the big thing. So then guys are like, well, am I a player? Am I like the cool guy? Am I awesome guy? Nope, we're gonna go even deeper than that into the only thing you can control. And this I get from Nathaniel Branden's The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem and the Psychology of Self-Esteem. What he says is the only thing you can control is your awareness and where you focus your attention, ultimately leading to the decisions you make. So the only thing you can control is your decisions. And those decisions result in actions. So I think the type of identities that I appreciate, or I think that are really good for guys that want to kind of juice the most out of life there, take the most, that seems to be the phrase I'm using lately, juice the most out of it, right, and take action, would be a man of action. So this is like, no matter what happens in your environment, you lose your job, you can still be a man of action. You can go out and find a new job. When you go out, and this also, it filters into any sort of decision you make, right? You're hanging out at home. Right now it's really cold for me here in Chicago. Do I want to go to the gym? Well, it's really cold. I'm a man of action here. I start thinking, I start questioning. Nope, you're a man of action. I'm going to the gym. You're at the bar, you're at the club, you see that girl, or wherever you see the hot girl, and you think, should I do this? Should I not? She's kind of scary. I'm not really in the right headspace to do this. I'm a man of action. Boom, I'm going to go for it. So that's what I've heard for multiple years before I was even an instructor. I like the man of action type thing. Me personally, the one I've probably been more moving towards lately is the man of stories. So something I used to have on my website, bradbranson.com, I had the Dos Equis man, which is the beer commercial, where it's this old guy and he's got the tuxedo on and he's got the Dos Equis beer, and he's supposed to be like the most interesting man in the world. That's who the Dos Equis man, the most interesting man in the world. And I thought to myself, that's a great identity. That's the type of thing that I want to be. I want to be the man where I'm 60, 70 and having all these amazing stories, where I saved a penguin from Antarctica and I was with all these girls in Ibiza one time and drove my yacht or something. So I think to myself, from the man of stories headspace, all of a sudden, a lot of the adventures I'm trying to do this year, adventures I've had in the past, related specifically to that. So I'll tell you a good one and a bad one that I turned into a good one. A good one would be something like, I'm in Dubai. And already that for me is a cool story. But I'm in Dubai, we're going out almost every night and the clubs are amazing and we're pulling all the time. But during the day, I'm kind of recovering from another night out, going out 21 nights in a row. And I think to myself, is this making me a man of stories here in this crazy country, not doing anything? Nope, we got to do something. So what do? We go out and rent Land Cruisers and cruise around in these Toyota Land Cruisers through the sand dunes of the desert. And again, now I'm telling the story right here, telling it now because I took that extra step through filtering things of that identity and making the decision through that identity of like, I'm a man of stories. I remember another example of a classic moment that I had was with one of my friends who's one of the most intelligent and well-traveled and lived a crazy life fought in wars, read 1,000 books or something like that. And he was telling me kind of his philosophy here, and it's very similar to the man of stories. And the story, how it went was, he's this like older guy, probably 38 or so, and I was probably 26, 27. We were in Copenhagen, and I was sick as shit. I was super sick, but all of a sudden he found 2 girls, and he said, hey, we're gonna pull these girls home. Now, he's 38, I'm 28 at the time, maybe 27, and these 2 girls are 19. So we kind of organized it. Even though I'm sick, I'm like, okay, gorgeous Danish girls, not going to fight that. I'll fight through the pain of the cold and push through. But they live a little bit outside the city. So we figured it out. Their dad picks us up. So the dad picks us up, the 2 little 19-year-old girls, and my friend, who's probably as old as the dad, and then myself here. We get about 20 miles outside of the city, and they yell at the dad in Danish to pull over, and we buy some vodka at the grocery store. For me at this point, I'm completely like, this is insane. This is weird that we're going back to their parents' house, the dad's picking them up. And I say to my friend, this is fucked up. I can't do this. And his response, I thought, was something that actually kind of changed my life in a minor way. Is he said to me, he said, I love a little bit of chaos. I love chaos in life because otherwise it's too boring. And I thought to myself, that's pretty fun. Like you just fuck it up a little bit and kind of deal with the punches there, because the variety of that's where the stories come from. And if I think about my best pulls where I'm pulling some girl home, it's not the one where it was like I saw her in the corner and I said hi, we talked for a bit and I pulled her out of there. The crazy ones are like the girl in the alley or something where everything fucks up and the only place I can do it is in some crazy place and it just gets all crazy with that stuff. So I do actually agree that the man of stories, there's a little chaos in there and you got to learn to kind of embrace it. The other side of it for me though is, when bad things happen, through this I can filter it in the same way. So again, ultimately, let me tell the end of that story, is I left, I just took a taxi back home. The guy, all of a sudden he's late to seminar, we're on boot camp weekend, he comes late to seminar, looking completely trashed. He comes out, he's like, dude, I didn't sleep at all. And I asked him what happened. He ended up having a threesome with these two 19-year-olds that were basically half his age in the parents' basement. So it's like amazing, these crazy stories that happen when you just kind of push your comfort zone and do some crazy shit. That was one of the fucking hilarious stories there. So that is a great example for me. You're going outside the city, you might get lost, but I'm reframing it in a way that, hey, I'm a man of stories. Let's do this. This is gonna be awesome. Another example would be, one time I was in Norway and I couldn't figure out how to, we couldn't find a place to stay for the night. And instead of me thinking, oh shit, this is gonna fucking suck, and I beat myself up and get pissed off and frustrated, I just think to myself, well, this is gonna be a funny story to tell my kids someday. And that was the story where I've told before where I snuck into the King's Garden in Oslo and got escorted out with bayonets by these soldiers. And it was a hilarious, crazy story. And it's one of my favorite stories to tell. And that came from me just kind of going with the flow, not going with the flow, but just embracing the moment and thinking about how this is gonna be chaotic and kind of fun. And that's filtered straight through the identity of me being that man of action, man of stories. If my identity was more like, I want to be stable and have a secure life, that's not going to factor very well in when I get to a city and don't even have a place to stay. So I like picking a sort of identity that is going to fulfill the lifestyle that I want. The last identity I really like comes from Richard Branson's book, Losing My Virginity. And what he talks about in there is being the man of challenge. So he gives the stories of where his mom, when he was 4 or 5 years old, she would just throw him out of the car and he would have to find his way home. And that's kind of cruel. But at the same point, after him doing that, if you look at his business career and the whole kind of evolution of his companies, multiple companies, now he's a billionaire and everything, is basically he's driven by that challenge. He's always trying to challenge himself to push to the next level. Ooh, this business was amazingly successful. Let's go into something completely, now I'm gonna do airlines and push forward with that, one of the most challenging industries in the world, challenging industries there is. And now he's like, damn, new challenge, let's do it. And he's just driven by that. And it's a really healthy, positive way of continually being motivated and pushing forward, as opposed to the opposite when you get into things like being really stressed out because you're trying to prove yourself to someone. So you're thinking, oh, my dad never said I love you, so I got to prove myself and be successful. And then there's this it's like a dirty motivation, as opposed to something that's under your control and something where you can really be energized and excited about. So I think those are 3 of my favorite ones there: the man of action, the man of stories, and the man of challenge. I think you can kind of bring them all together and use them in a good way. Now, when I was structuring this topic and going through the whole identity stuff, I had a lot of issues with it, kind of figuring out what to talk about, how I personally felt about my identity and what it was. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that I don't really think about it anymore. My awareness has shifted away from the filter that makes the decisions to more where I just make the decisions. Almost the filter went away. And I think what happens is it relates again back to what I was talking about, how when you have too many choices and too many flavors out there, you're kind of stuck in overwhelm, paralysis by analysis mode, because you don't know what the right way to move forward is. For me, what's happened is I'm hyper attuned to what I want out of life. I've talked about this in the emotional intelligence video. I've talked about it probably in a bunch of videos. We're talking about, like the girls, the financial freedom, traveling the world, being more conscious. So I want to constantly be moving towards those things. So I have my life values there, and I'm stuck on that path. Keep on moving towards that. And what's happened is that I screw up here, make a mistake, get closer to the path. I learn from that, and move back on the path. Do something right, it reinforces the path. And now I feel like I'm so honed in on just moving towards what I want. I don't even need to utilize that filter anymore. So I don't even really have that filter of, am I living as the man of action here or the man of challenge? I'm just constantly, continually moving towards what I want. And this gets into the whole, like, the self-esteem side of thing. I think what happens is you slowly shift. There's a shift that happens after a couple of years of really honing the self-development and self-actualization, where you shift away from not so much worrying about what other people think, but your identity is very externally based. So your identity is based on things that happened in your life, whether it be shitty things and you have a victim identity, or really good things and you have like, I excel at things, whatever your identity is there. Lately for me, probably the one that I focus on mostly, not focus on, the one I constantly remind myself of through my actions, is I want to have like really good taste. So for me, I'm sure everyone thinks they have amazing taste, so whatever. But I feel that a lot of the books that I read, when I recommend them to someone, they're always like, thank you for that book. That was an amazing book. Or if I pick a song and I'm like, this is a great song, listen to it. They're like, wow, that was a great song. It's pretty rare these days that I give something to the people in my life and they're like, dude, that sucks. Maybe that's the people I surround myself with. I'm sure it is. Although I'm talking, this is on the grand scheme of thousands of people through me interacting with guys through the blog, through RC Nation and all that. So what's come out of that ultimately is I know what I like. I really know what I like personally. And when I make a decision now, there's no real question behind it. This is an interesting thing that I've noticed. Full side tangent here is my verbal game. My verbal game in pickup has been amazing lately. And I haven't been going out as much. I haven't whatsoever thought about trying to make my verbal game better. But what it comes down to is because I trust myself so much and I'm so like it's like I'm just disconnected from everything in my own little world. And I just value everything the decisions that I make there, to where I'm just like, yes, this decision is right. So when I talk about something and I have a conversation with a girl, she could be like, oh, that's stupid. Like, it doesn't even register the fact that she thinks something is bad or it doesn't jive with her. I'm just so confident in everything of myself through those mistakes, through the trial and error, and through also reinforcement of the good stuff. So I think this is why for me, ultimately at the end of the day, the identity stuff, it almost goes away a little bit. I think there is the transition period where it's really good to tack on one of these ones that I talked about, the whole man of stories, man of action, or the man of challenge in there. And definitely, of course, I still, on some subconscious level, I'm sure I think about those things. And actually, it pushes me a little bit because this year, there's things I want to do and it's easy to get complacent. By a lot of people's standards, people could say my life is already insane. Like last year, I was out of the country for 6 months, out of the States. So they'd be like, wow, you're already living the man of stories, the man of action. In my head, I'm thinking, no, I need to do even more. So I'm doing things like, Mount Kilimanjaro this year, going to a snowboarding trip in Whistler in about a week and a half. And so those are the things where it's still me motivating, pushing myself because of that filter. But ultimately, like I said, at the end of the day, you learn to figure out what you want out of life and you just push and move towards that. Lastly, the one last thing I want to kind of describe here is a book that I've recommended multiple times before, and probably the book of the week, we'll talk about it when I get to the lifestyle video, is going to be the David Deida, The Way of the Superior Man, where he talks about being on your path, being on your purpose. And I've hit this from multiple different angles, but think about this again from the identity perspective. What he's saying there from this, and the way I'm kind of translating it, is you have the filter, which is your identity, and you constantly move towards that, and you stick in that, and you do it at the detriment of maybe other people. So you think, this is what I want out of life. I want more women. So maybe, your friends want to go to some sporting event. You're like, no, I'm going out. Sorry. Or you get new friends because the friends that you have are married and stuff like that. Not that that's bad to have those people in your life, but it is good to immerse yourself and surround yourself with guys that are taking action, going out. And so it's just it's a good little mastermind there. So at some point, you kind of get rid of the noise out there, focus on what you want, and just continually move towards that. Hopefully this percolates a couple thoughts in your mind, gets you meditating on some things about the decisions you've made and why you're even here. Why did you even get into the whole pick up women thing, and why do you want more women in your life? Is it because of your friends? Is it because of something in your family? what makes you make those decisions? What is your identity? And how do you filter the things that you're doing in your life? Ultimately, this shouldn't make you all of a sudden go off and live in a cave and try to get rid of the ego, although, hell, that's a great thing too, or go surf for the rest of your life. But I think it's good, and my end goal with all this is to not live my life in reaction and to be aware of, it just makes you more, you understand reality better, and you understand where you fit in among reality when you know what drives you, you know what motivates you, and you know what makes you, what forces you, and kind of what forces are there. I'm having a tough time saying this, to have you decide on how you take action. So I love the inner game stuff. Let me know what you think. Send me an email at brad@realsocialdynamics.com or ask some questions at this month's webinar related to this. And tell me what you like. Do you like more of the inner game stuff? Because I personally have a lot of fun here. Or do you want some outer game stuff, and specifically what outer game material you would enjoy? Until next week, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.